How y'all doing? How y'all doing? This is Alvin with Trying Success here on the Old Fashioned Health Network. Good health inside and out. We have an amazing show today. I have a group of guys that we put a show together called Brothers in the Kitchen. Unfortunately, we're not in the kitchen. We're on my show today, Trying Success. So y'all know this is my backdrop. So when we get in the kitchen, guys, we'll have you all. We'll be in the kitchen. But let me introduce my guests. Right here to my right, we got Kelvin, and we have Kevin, and we have Lorenzo. Now, let me tell you, I always get the names mixed up, so throughout the show, if you hear me call Kelvin, Kevin, or Kevin, Kelvin, I'm asking y'all to forgive me early because, just letting y'all know I can't get it perfect, but I'm trying to get it perfect. But anyway, y'all, we came up with this show because we talked about a lot of times you see a lot of things on social media, on television, and it's always if it's a situation where it's a black on black, it's a crime where someone killed a young person, police brutality. I'm trying to find a way to put it, but anyway, a lot of things that we've seen in the media where police may have shot, like Trayvon Martin, good example. Trayvon Martin, when he was killed, the media, the first thing they went to was to his mom, Tamir Rice. All those other situations we've seen, it seems that they go to the mother first, thinking that the men don't have a voice. So that's the reason why this show was created. I wanted to give something that would give brothers a chance to speak up, like those are our kids as well, So we came up with Brothers in the Kitchen, and we came up with Brothers in the Kitchen because y'all think all we do is eat, which in my case, I have a person that's on this show that always says every time they call me, I'm eating, which is probably true. So anyway. So today we're going to talk a little bit about several things. It's going to be like a potluck of stuff, all right? But one of the things I want to talk about, since we did this on my podcast today, I saw in the news where Twitch had committed suicide. So I was kind of talking to the guys about that, but we're not just going to stick on that. But a few other things we're talking about is the holiday season, not necessarily Christmas, but holiday season. For those that just like to say holiday season, and those that like to say Christmas, whatever you choose, that's yours, you know what I'm saying? But things like that. So I want to talk about suicide and when it comes to males. And I don't want to just say African-American males because I think about males in general seem like have a harder time dealing with issues, and they tend to, not harder than females, but I think the as far as suicide tends to be more male than it is females. So we can't speculate why Twitch. You can speculate why he might have killed himself. He financially appears as though he was okay. He had a beautiful family. He's seen every time you saw him, he was always smiling, dancing, because that's dancing supposed to make you happy, smiling supposed to make you happy. But I can tell you myself, even at my happiest moments, there may be times when you think I'm really, really happy. I may be happy, but it doesn't mean I'm not going through anything. Right. You know what I'm saying? So you don't really know. I always say when a person commits suicide, to me it's kind of like they go temporarily blind. They can't see tomorrow, and they don't remember the good days, which was yesterday. So it's kind of like it's like you can't see anymore. And I call it temporary because if you could actually wake up and see, okay, tomorrow may be better, then there may be a chance to give you a second chance in life, and you may not commit suicide. Kelvin, what you think?
I have to be honest that my opinion about suicide has changed so much over the years. Mm-hmm. Of course, because number one, it has touched my life very closely. Mm-hmm. I believe that you can see it more in the male population because, especially in men of color, melanated men all over the world, really. Mm-hmm. But we are expected to be so masculine and so macho, and coming with that is not having a good balanced way to process your feelings and your emotions, and really, just to be honest, that's almost completely absent in the black family. Like, love my family, but we never sat down and talked about how I felt and how things affected the way that I feel, or my well-being or anything. We've always been the type of family is that you take the punch, you get up, and you keep moving. Right. And so that's very prevalent all over the world, and especially here in the United States with people of color. And so I think that's why it happens a lot, especially when it comes to men. Women are built a little bit different. Right. They are a little more introspective. They deal with their emotions, or they're not afraid to deal with their emotions or show their emotions and express their emotions. So I think that it lightens the weight a little bit more. And so, and again, it's about communicating and talking. I think most women don't have issues with that, but I think with men, and especially men of color, we have issues with communicating and telling people how we feel.
Okay. Kevin, what do you think?
I definitely can piggyback off of the point in which we don't talk about things. We don't discuss what's going on. A lot of times, especially within the Black community.
Right.
Now, why the numbers? And again, I have to look at the numbers to see who commits suicide more, whether it be male or female or other. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But one thing I will say when I look at suicide. And I know you said the blindness. I look at it from a foresight standpoint, right? So there's a lack of foresight. I feel that individuals may have when they, commit suicide. But I want people to keep in mind too that having suicidal thoughts is very common. You know what I mean? That's not something that is. That's just foreign. You know what I mean? But the biggest thing I think with suicide is awareness. I feel as though individuals were not aware about suicide, and then we're looking at years ago,
right.
Dating, let's say 30, 40 years ago, and I want to look at those numbers and see what were the numbers in regards to individuals that committed suicide. And again, it might be one of those things where it might not have been rendered as a suicide. It might have been rendered as something else because obviously you look at science and DNA and different things like that. But awareness, I think, is the biggest thing when it comes to suicide. You don't know suicide is an option unless you hear about it being on the table. Right now, if you look at Oregon, they have something in place that's called assisted suicide. Right now, for you to want to go about taking it, obviously, there's different parameters. That you have to be, you have to pass. But we're in a different age now where, empathy is it varies amongst people. But I feel as though, everybody's trying to care for other people. So it's like, hey, this is what you want to do, then do it. You know what I mean? But to say why the numbers for male versus female, I'm not quite sure why that may be the case, but I do agree with Kelvin in regards to the masculinity aspect. I know a lot of, personally, I know a lot of Black men that are insecure. They're self-loathing in spaces, so they feel as though they have to lift themselves up with various things, whether it be women, money, glitz, glamour, Instagram. I think there's a lot to it, but again, it's one of those things where awareness and I feel like lack of foresight are pretty prominent within it.
Okay, Lorenzo, what you think?
A lot of times when we speak about things that have happened to men in their lives along the way, we look back to our childhood, and let's be honest about the way we were raised. There was never a time or a period to where it was okay to cry or where it was okay to show emotion as men. Women, or, growing up with my sister, it was always okay for her to show emotion. Right. But it was never okay for me to show emotion or tell someone how I was feeling. I had to be hard or had to be, stronger than what I was because of the way that it was portrayed or the way that it was viewed by other people. I was told once before that you can't really look back at history when it comes to a lot of things, but I totally disagree with that. I think that a lot of things are embedded in us, just like when you said our DNA. Our DNA is embedded in us, and those cycles continue. Right. That history continues, and it's passed on from generation to generation, and we have to learn new things in new ways, and we have to come together as brothers and like on the brothers that's on this panel, we have to be able to reach out to each other and not be afraid of judgment and not be afraid of what that's going to look like to the world, and be honest with ourselves about what our feelings are. One of my good friends, he called me just a couple of days ago and was just like, man, and he's actually a psychologist. And he hit me up and he was like, man, I just went out to brunch on Sunday with one of my good friends, and 2 days later, he killed himself. And he said, I missed all the signs. He was faulting himself. I said, man, he showed you exactly what he wanted you to see. Because we've gotten used to masking that. I'm able to smile through my pain. I'm able to smile through, you know, the things that I go through in life. Most people will never know what I go through in life. But it's good to be able to pick up the phone or be able to reach out to one of your homies and say, hey, I need to come see you. Yeah. You know, we need to have a real heart-to-heart and talk some things out and, you know, be there for them in the same way that they're there for you.
So let me ask y'all something. So this is have you thought about maybe the demographics and why I say that? Let's just use Africa, South Africa, for example. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the suicidal rate is, or an area where people are not exposed to as too much as we are here. So many different options, so many different stereotypes and all those kind of things, which kind of make you feel like could drive different behaviors or different mindsets and different thoughts. If you're in an area, I'm only using South Africa because just looking at what we supposedly see on television, or just an area altogether that don't have the social media, have the chasing the labels and chasing the entertainers and feeling like you got to be something more than what you are. And if you come from an area, and even we can take the United States and divide it up and just say people in the South versus people in the North versus people in the West and East. For me, I grew up in the South. I grew up in Mississippi as a little kid. You know, then we moved into Chicago. My whole mindset living in Mississippi versus living in Chicago was like day and night. When I was in Chicago, I'm on 10 and ready, trying to make sure. And then you always just living the city life and the comparison and the different clothes, different labels and all those things. You move down south. For me, when I moved to Mississippi at my age, at the time I moved here, it wasn't like you got to have all of the name brands and all those kind of things. It wasn't nothing. You just got a chance to appreciate in the rural area I was in. Mm-hmm. That doesn't speak for all of Mississippi, but it allowed me just to appreciate the outdoors and just having a good time. I didn't know what necessarily a struggle was until as I got older and it was time for me to go to college. And then I got exposed to other people, and then they put a light on competition, feeling like you need to be more. So I'm wondering, how much of it have to do with your environment?
Well, I think that it's a major thing, and I think that that's what you just uncovered in what you were just saying. Like, in a country that there's a lot simpler way of life, you have less issues, less things to stress you out, less drama that's going to happen when you live a simpler life, which a lot of people are opting to do these days. Yeah. So, of course, I think that the suicide rate is definitely going to be a lot less. You also have to take into account, like here in the United States, we have so much going on that can affect the body that we don't even know anything about. The chemtrails, the chemicals in the food that we're eating, you know, chemicals in the water that we're drinking. It may not affect some people one way, but it may affect someone another way. The music that we're listening to, and not just even the lyrics and the words that we hear, but it's about the frequencies that are being emitted into the atmosphere. They're affecting people in a way that when you are in a simpler environment to live and to coexist, that you just don't. Of course, they have some issues, but it's just not the same.
Not the same.
Yeah. And I can tell you that even from this situation that I'm in now, moving back and forth between Atlanta and South Carolina on a farm, but coming here to work and be on a makeup set and TV sets and stuff like that. Like, it's almost night and day.
Yeah. You know, when I would travel sometime, if I would, say for instance, I would fly from here back to Chicago, I promise you, it seemed like once I got on that plane, and that plane take off, and I got to Chicago, my adrenaline started flowing. As soon as I got to O'Hara or Midway, you could feel like unintentional, unintentionally. So,
well, energy is energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so you are taking, when I drive into the city, like, there are things about being in South Carolina that I absolutely love, like being on the farm with horses. I love horses. I love big dogs. Right. You know, I like the decorating and putting on all of the events that we do at the farm. Right. But when I drive into the city of Atlanta, there's an energy I feel as soon as I hit like the Conyers area that is just absolutely different. Right. And actually, because I've been here so long, it feels like being at home in South Carolina doesn't even feel like home. Right. Being here feels like home. Like, even if I'm not feeling my best, coming into this energy, it gives me a little more of a oomph. And not because I feel like I have to ride the wave, because that's the one great thing about Atlanta that I really do like. Right. you know, you can play the fast role and be out every night and do all of this stuff and
Right.
the you know, all of that, running behind the bag.
Right.
I mean, but you can really actually lead a very calm life as well here and be great.
One thing I will say is it's well documented the difference in states. I'll keep it U.S. and domestic. As I mentioned earlier with Oregon, you know, that was something that was voted on, you know, in a bill. Now, if they were to bring that here in Georgia, what do you think the remarks would be?
No.
If we thought of it as crazy, the Bible Belt, you know what I mean? So to say that, you know, it's a difference is obviously that's of course it's a difference. You know what I'm saying? But I also do, going back to history, I feel as though it has been around. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think you look at, you know, going back to slavery. I mean, you know, I remember this scene in Life where the character decided to make a run for it, but he knew he wasn't gonna make it.
Right,
You see what I'm
right,
saying?
right.
In a sense, one could say that was self-administered suicide. You see what I'm saying? So it's going back in time, but going back to environments, yes, of course, if you're in a household that is loving and sharing all this energy, then you know the perception is you should be fine.
Right.
But I remember I have family members that
Sorry, I was
you know they would at the end of the day, my family's from Baltimore, right? Predominantly. So similar probably to Chicago, they feel the way that they feel. They move the way that they move, and if you don't like it, hey, it is what it is.
Right.
And one of the things I look at is population. They're in you know, upper areas, Northeast, everybody's on top of each other.
Right.
They're used to dealing with other people.
Right.
They're used to dealing with BS, whatever the case may be. South may be different. You, as you mentioned, you have a farm. How close is your next door neighbor? Right. So, environment is crucial, and to say that somebody, you know, being alone in their own thoughts, you know, at the end of the day, we all know that there's a limit on how deep you probably should get in your mind.
Right.
You know, but again, going back to environments, yes, of course,
turning my phone, y'all keep
there's
talking.
there's a differential, but again, you know, I feel like there's a difference in how people go about their problems via, yes, the people they're around as well as where they live at too. And I think that's crucial too.
I mean, definitely where people live at has a lot to do with it. But I think the bigger thing is just how we are able to express ourselves, and if we're able to express ourselves, because that doesn't change no matter where you are.
Right.
So you know, there's things that Kelvin said that is very therapeutic about his life back there. You know what I mean? I love horses as well, and I know that they're very therapeutic. They've been known to, you know, help people through issues.
Right.
You know, animals have been known to do that for people as well. You know, and a lot of the times when you think about, you know, just being able to express yourself and being loved, I've seen the difference in raising a child, and as well as in the way that I was loved, and being able to hug on a child and being able to, you know, tell them that you love them every day, and being able to show them that love versus, oh, get up and dust yourself off, you'll be all right. No, I'm really not. My knee is really broken right now. But you know, I got to play through that because it's, you know what I mean? Like, I'm really not okay. Yeah. But I couldn't say that. I couldn't express that. I had to get up and do what I was told. You know what I mean? So I think that's a large part of the difference in the way we raise our children. You have to be careful those seeds that you plant early on,
right,
and those things that you put in that child's head early on, because it carries on. Yeah. And they're not able to say, hey, I'm really struggling right now. I really need a friend right now. I really have to reach out to somebody because the thoughts that are going through my head is not normal. Or it is to the point to where I'm thinking about suicide and stuff like that. So you said that it's okay to have suicidal thoughts. Okay, so is it okay for you to reach out to someone and tell them that?
I think it is.
It is, but I'm saying, would he do it, and would it be done is the problem. And that's what I'm saying. Like it's it's okay to say that, and we want you to say that. But another thing, just recently, I had a good friend that reached out to me, and he needs counseling, and which is it. I was blown away by the fact that he reached out to me and he trusted me with that information. But I did research in trying to find him a therapist And he wanted a black male therapist, which I understood that because I've gone through therapy and I've been through therapy. And the white therapist that I had, I felt like I needed a check after I was done with him because I actually helped him more than he helped me. But I understood and I did better, and I was able to relay a little bit more to the black therapist that I ended up finding. So I did some research and I found him a few black male therapists, but it was a difficult task. It was a difficult task to find that for him because there's not very many.
Right.
There's not very many in our area, and actually the one that I did find for him that he liked, he's going to have to travel, either that or do it virtual, a good ways in order to see him. So that's how far and few in between that they are. So, definitely if there's any young black men out there that are thinking about, becoming a therapist, it's definitely needed. It's valued. It's you know what I mean, couldn't motivate you enough that you are needed and you should continue to pursue what you're doing.
Right. So final, but this piece of the segment as far as this, one of the things that I despise about people dealing with any type of struggles is to rely on religion to try to help them get past it.
Blessed away is what you're saying?
Pray it away, all that kind of thing. It's just not an option. It's for me. It's kind of
It's
like
also taught in our DNA.
It's taught to a lot of us. But I will have to tell you this. I understand why a person may tell you that because they may feel like I prayed about this and I got past whatever it was. But that does not necessarily apply to everybody's situation, and you don't know how deep that person may be into that down spiral. So you might want to try to point them to some professional help as opposed to just a couple of scriptures, because I prayed before. It seemed like I didn't call out them people's names. I forgot how to pronounce John, Jacob, and all the rest of his friends. So it's like, I can't.
Look, he know who you talking about.
Well,
Go ahead.
first of all, I think that there's an opportunity to differentiate between spirituality and religion. I think that praying is more a spiritual practice. It's a part of religion, but it's a spiritual practice. And I think it's definitely necessary. And I think it can be coupled with counseling or with therapy, because of course I know several people that have gone through therapy for years and it wasn't necessarily successful. It really has to do with you and what it is that you want to do. And, as a person who needs the therapy, like how, the work, my old pastor used to say, it only works if you work it. Whatever the process is, whatever the law is, it's only going to work if you work it. So even if you're going to see a therapist, if you're not utilizing some of the things that they're giving you, the tools that they're giving you to kind of deal with these issues, you're going to be in the same place that you always have been.
But check this out, though. So that's kind of like, for me, being able to know those things are available to you. Like a person that commits suicide, they know you can call the 800 number and all those kind of things. But when they in that when they're already in that dark place, the last thing they're thinking about is, let me call this number or let me talk to somebody.
But the problem is that when you call that number, and that's kind of what Kelvin was just saying, on the other end of that number is not the right person for you. So some of those people, I'm sure, did reach out to somebody as well as one of those hotlines and some of that, but it was the wrong person to reach out to. And that's kind of the point that I was making
What do you
earlier.
mean it was the wrong person to reach out to?
So when you think about, like I just said, when my friend reached out to me and he entrusted me with that to be able to give him the right information, I guarantee you if he had reached out to my cousin would have said, dude, you need to suck that up. You're going to be good. Like, you going through what you're going through, but you will be all right. That's the wrong advice to give someone when they're going through something.
Right.
As well as when you call that number, just like I said, I had to go through several therapists before I found the right one for me. The one that's on the other end of that line might not be the right one for you.
Right, but here's what I'm saying. To me, as far as suicide is concerned, if once you go into that dark place, we're not only
That's
assuming.
not the first thought.
Right, we only assume once you in that dark place and you already fallen, at that point, when you start in that decline, you're not in a mindset to try to want to ask for help. You're not in the mindset, let me call Lorenzo or let me call Kim, because you are, and the only reason why we can quarterback Monday morning is because we're not in that game. But when you in that dark place, to testify to say, but it happened to me, but I came back, that's because it hadn't gotten dark enough yet.
Well, the truth is, you will not be able to save everybody. Like, there's some people who
yeah,
are going
I'll
to,
get-
you
yeah.
know, like my best friend 8 years ago, 2 days after we had just spent Thanksgiving together. Me, his friends, my friends cooked the whole nine, watched movies, played cards. 2 days later, he killed himself. Not a person that you would ever think would even really think of killing themselves, but in that moment, he had already made up his mind that that's what he was gonna do, and it wasn't about he made it a point not to contact people and not, you know, he barred the door. He did all these things to make sure that nobody would interrupt whatever it was that he was doing. So sometimes it ain't nothing you can do. Like,
Right.
if it's something that they just gonna do, they're gonna do it. I think what's important here is that each generation, we can count things that are getting worse, or it seems like it's getting worse.
Seems
So let's
like it's a
say
good
mental health and suicide seems to be one of those things. Okay, so now that we have this out in the, you know, in the open and on the platform, how can we fix it? Okay, well, you're not going to be able to fix every case, but it comes along with education, and that's starting as a child. And you know, of course, unfortunate thing is we cannot depend on every parent to teach that way, to raise that way. So the only other thing that we have is schooling. And in schooling, I think that there needs to be something where we're talking about like, just like they made us say, stars. What's the little
Star-Spangled Banner.
thing? You know,
Not the little thing.
look,
Star-Spangled
wait a minute.
The
I pledge
pledge.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Like, how we would do that. Let's take some time out. Let's take 15, 30 minutes out of the school day in these kids' programs to kind of have that moment. What I find here in the Western Hemisphere is that we want to fix things after the fact.
Oh,
When
most
you think
definitely.
about spirituality from an Eastern point of view, it's about it's about preparing. It's about,
Preparation, yeah.
right, not trying to fix it after it's gotten real crazy.
But doesn't spirituality teach you to devalue everything? I mean, it doesn't teach you to devalue, have more value for life than you do things.
Absolutely.
So when you get to the point where you can devalue a cell phone and entertainment life and all those things, and then start appreciating life as it is, then you don't have as much to fight about whether I'm less than.
Well, that has to be taught, because the thing is, we're being taught, people, the societies are being taught that those labels, those cars, that money, those jobs are what makes you who you are.
Exactly.
If we are if we are in the beginning instilling in children that you're more than enough already, that you are a spiritual being before you're ever a human being, that you have power, that you have, your body is electric and how it works. If we start, you know, you a master of your own thoughts. So we might have, we're gonna have negative thoughts.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. But how much time are you gonna spend on that negative thought?
So, all right.
But before y'all move on, though, I think it's something that definitely needs to be said, because you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, as far as the fashion and as far as, you know, appearances
Material
to keep
things.
up with
Influence.
materials.
Right,
and
right.
So something interesting just happened within the last couple of days. The owner of Louis Vuitton passed, Elon Musk, and now is the richest person in the world. So if that gives you any idea as to how fashion and how, you know, that industry controls us and our community, because we all know who's supporting Louis Vuitton.
Not me. I don't have no Louis.
Well, here's what I want
My
to say.
point
like,
is, as a whole, we all know who's supporting.
I
that.
think that has been more of a trend in the past 10 to 15 years, but you have to think about it. Louis Vuitton was a major company before that was ever the case. And when normal people like us, regular people like us, couldn't afford it. So they were making money then. Now, are they making money hands over feet now because we've gotten into it? Absolutely. But I think that it's just a thing that we need to teach people, because even if you're not into the labels, like when you mentioned you're from Mississippi, I know some people from Mississippi, their house is as big as this room. But they got 6 or 7 cars out in the yard, and for them, that's a symbol of status. So, because at one point in time in Mississippi, and much like a lot of southern states, people did not have cars and they had to walk. So when you would get a car, and you would see a person had a car, that made the rest of the community feel like, oh, they just a little bit a step above.
The Joneses kinda got to-
So being from Mississippi, that's not all of it. So I do know people. The whole thing, I used to love cars when I was living in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Not because it made me feel like a status. We would get together, some of us, we'd be fixing our cars.
Old
changing them up.
schools and
Old
stuff like
schools.
that,
It had nothing to do with the fact that we only had 3 bedrooms.
It was a hobby.
In a house. It was just like, okay, fix some car. And then, hell, you're in Mississippi, how you gonna get to work? You need a car. Everybody had that. I mean, so it really, that seems to be like what seemed to be was stereotype, but actually people in Mississippi that had all those homes, they didn't get, now here's the difference. They own that home even if it was this size. Right. Now what's interesting is when you get these apartments and you got 4 or 5 different cars, high-end cars, and you can't pay your rent. I'd rather see a person in Mississippi with a house this size that's paid off and 10 cars out there in the front.
Neither nor. Neither nor. Neither nor.
I get what you're saying.
I'm sticking
Neither
up for
nor.
Mississippi.
I
Neither nor.
understand what you're saying, but his point is still valid. Like materialistic, at some point you had to realize.
I had a Buick Regal. How much materialistic is that
It
going to
wasn't.
be?
It
For a
doesn't-
person who doesn't have a Buick Regal, and especially if you had it hooked up and you had this, that, and the
Candy paint.
third, let me tell you something. I will never forget this.
Did you live in the country?
I lived in the country all my life.
Okay. You live in
Yes.
Mississippi, though.
But South Carolina ain't much different.
No, but see,
It ain't
but
much
see,
different.
they make
And
Mississippi seem like it's less than you said. Oh,
Y'all was a little lagging behind.
We wasn't.
Y'all was
hold
a
on
little
now.
behind now.
What you gauging it on? What are you gauging it on? What are you gauging that
On
by?
information,
Mississippi
just
has
like
got a short end of the
That-
stick.
yeah,
that is
now,
no,
yeah.
The colonizers said that we were behind. That's not true.
Y'all, if you go and experience, you see it was a little behind. And listen, I'm gonna go ahead and say this too. Like even with the stoplights,
We
I
didn't
don't
need
think
that
I've
many
ever been in a
stoplights.
state where I get nervous because I was like, where is the next stoplight or
But why are
stop
you looking for
sign?
stoplights? You're supposed to enjoy
I
the
just-
trees and the cows and everything. Why you worried about a stoplight?
No, but I'm just kidding.
Anyway, y'all. So now we all from Mississippi. Let me ask. Okay.
Before we get off at that
Got a little
point,
touchy about Mississippi.
I know,
They always do. I work with somebody else, and she used to get so touchy about
And if-
Mississippi.
and if
And
you-
my S's eye.
Yeah.
And
Say
if,
it
and look, and if you had said Jackson State, I'd have been ready to get us like, ooh.
end of the show.
We
But-
didn't even talk about that. But
Well,
go
one
ahead.
thing I will say before we get off the topic of suicide, and I think we've all kind of touched on it, is unlearn to relearn, right? Especially within our community, right? You go back to schooling and education. They have guidance counselors now. And they've been had them, but are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is the
No.
question. But for me, I feel like the element of unlearn to relearn, and as we've all kind of discussed, is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So for us to say that you think like that, so you need this X, Y, and Z, we're naive if we really think like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But again, going back to childhood, I feel like that's crucial. And again, the teaching of the youth. And then even then, it's the root. It starts with the child, right? A lot of times. So if you start at the root, then it sprout up to the household, and then you can learn more about the household as well. But again, as I can,
I definitely agree with that, and I just say this in closing on that topic. I mean, brothers, y'all are loved. Whether somebody's ever told you that or not, or whether you believe that yourself or not, you are loved, you are valued. So if there is something or someone that, anybody that you can think of in your life without calling a 1-800 number, whatever the case may be, that you can reach out to, please do so. You know what I mean? Before deciding to end your life, because not only will you be affected by that, the world will be affected by that because you are valued.
Yes.
If you have children, your children will be affected by that, as well as your entire family. And then just your place here on earth is valued.
Yeah.
And I do. I know we've been on this subject for a little while, and this is a little bit.
It's not gonna be about Mississippi, is it?
Oh, what? No, it's not. I want to tell you, no, just recently, you know, since what is it, Wakanda Black Panther 2 came out, I have a niece and a nephew who this young lady had with my youngest brother, but she's had several. My youngest brother got killed 7 years ago, and she's had other children since then, right? So I make it a valiant effort to make sure I spend time with my nieces and my nephews that you know she has. And so, anyways, he asked to go to the movies. My nephew asked to go to the movies, and I think he's in the 3rd or the 4th grade. And so I told him yes, I would take him to the movies. So his little brother, who is in kindergarten, overheard our conversation, and so he wanted to go as well.
Okay.
Right? So I said yes.
Okay.
I'm getting to the point of a sense of community and family, which is what we need to get back to as melanated people. He's not my nephew. I didn't have to do that. I could have said no, but I want to get further into it. So when I said yes, he ran in the house like a crazy person, trying to put on his clothes. He slammed his finger in the door. He had his shirt on backwards. He had the shoes on the wrong foot. And I kept saying, now his mom is standing at the door of the truck that I'm driving, laughing, thinking it's funny. And so I said, tell him to calm down. I was like, hey, dude, calm down. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to leave you. Like, he has, at however old he is right now, maybe 6, has the worst case of anxiety that I have ever seen. He was like almost in tears trying to get him. I was like, calm down. We're not going anywhere. And so he starts to slow down a little bit or whatever. And I say to her, you need to go inside and help him pick the clothes that he needs to be wearing. Because come to find out, they'd never been to the movie theater before.
Wow.
Okay? And so I had to really literally have a talk with him when he got inside the truck. And then we had to pray because his energy was so 20, it was getting on my nerves, you know what I mean? It made me feel some type of way.
Drop back off.
So yeah, so I had to take some deep breaths and say, hey, let's pray real quick because it's all good. You're going to be fine. And so these are the things that we need to recognize in our own lives, in our own family, and do something about it when you see it, not 20 years later when they're killing themselves or they on all kind of meds. You know what I'm saying? Like, I saw that, and it was very sad to me.
I don't know your family, and I don't know the people that you're speaking of, but I will say this. With that situation and that child, just like you said, he had never been to the movie theater. I guarantee you he's lacking that love and that support in other areas.
I'm sure.
So that's the fact that you did that for him, that's a beautiful thing. And that's what I was talking about as far as being able to show these young black men a different way and showing them that it's okay to be emotional. It's okay for them to feel what they're feeling, and it's okay for them to have somebody to come to. So he then learns that he can now reach out to you if he can't reach out to anybody else.
And that you have someone that you can depend on. Like if because I really didn't feel like going, but I had already given them my word. Because you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's something that we, black parents or melanated parents be like, oh, child, they children. They're going to be all right. We'll take them next week, or we'll take them when next week never comes. Right. I think it's really important that we keep our word when we make a bond or binding agreement with children, that we keep our word.
Or anybody.
With anyone.
Anybody
but,
in general. But children, definitely crucial with them for sure.
So, y'all, we're going to wrap this up. I really thank you all for being on the show. But I just want to say one thing real quick about that. Now, where you say this happened? You was at home?
In South Carolina, yes.
Oh, okay. We don't have that problem in Mississippi. But anyway.
Sure.
All of Mississippi. Our kids don't have no problem with it. If they can't carry their butt to the music, they sit down. Watch TV, hee-haw or something, I don't know.
And that's the problem, hee-haw.
I appreciate y'all I appreciate y'all so much for being on the show. We're looking forward to Brothers in the Kitchen, the all-new all-male talk show. Thank y'all, and y'all enjoy the rest of your week and the rest of this year.